for this academic year. We were able to reschedule it from autumn, so I'm grateful that you're still here. And I wanted to first start off with our land acknowledgement. The University of Washington acknowledges the Coast Salish peoples of this land, the land which touches the shared waters of all tribes and bands within the Suquamish, Chulaf, and Muckleshoot nations. And I think this always remains a timely sentiment as we think about what it means to be a public servant. So I'm going to go ahead and let each of the panelists introduce themselves. If we could make sure that we project when we are talking, or if you all are asking questions, that way our recording can pick up your sound. I would appreciate it. So I guess I could first introduce myself. Hi, my name is Rachel Yamasato. I use she, her pronouns. I am the current Career Development Program Manager. If you've had anything to do with Handshake or with your internship, that was probably me that emailed you. So it's nice to see some of your faces in person. I'll go ahead and pass it on.
Hi everyone, my name is Ariel Matthews, she, her, and I am a Program and Policy Manager for our State Board of Education.
Hi everyone, I'm Vritti Jain. I use she, hers pronouns, and I'm the data analyst at the Snohomish Regional Fire and Rescue Department.
Hey everybody, Micah Phillips, he, him. I'm the Performance and Outreach Coordinator for the City of Bellevue.
Zan Gerard, she, her. I am the Associate Director for Donor Services and Development Operations for the UW College of the Environment.
And I also want to say that these are all alumni. So if you have questions about how your degree applies to future work, feel free to ask questions about that. We're going to start off with some set questions, and then you all are welcome to ask your own questions. We're going to just start off with why and how you began to work in the public sector and arrived at your position. So this might be a longer question. Feel free to share your journey a little bit. Anyone want to start?
Oh, no, okay. So I work in education policy, and originally I thought I would do work like in a lab. I had planned on like majoring in neuroscience and focusing on the, why people do what they do. And as I was at school, so I went to UW for undergrad as well. And as I started on that journey, I very quickly realized I actually really enjoyed interfacing with actual people, and that I didn't think like being in a lab would be something I would enjoy. But the idea of how folks talk with one another, how we can understand each other, how we can come together around really difficult ideas really was something that interested me. And so while I was here, I participated in an organization called Dream Project, and it looked a little different than it does currently, if any of you know how it works right now. But that was at the time a nonprofit ran by students who attended here, and there were like 500-600 students who were mentors and worked on different teams and went out into local schools and mentored students, helped them figure out what they wanted to do in their post-secondary journey, be that going to college, vocational training, direct into workforce, and did work around that. Working as part of the steering committee for that nonprofit really got me interested in the idea of how community can impact policy and what is happening on the ground, and gave me a lot of insight into how our education system is structured, not only on the local level, but thinking about how that runs up to the state level and what impact that does or doesn't actually have on student outcomes. And it also allowed me to see the idea of how nonprofits are run with perhaps well-meaning folks, but people who are not necessarily steeped in what impact that actually ends up having for the folks who they think they are serving. So it really heightened my awareness of where like pitfalls are and where there is kind of a lack of understanding about how the system works, and thus how we need to work in it to actually change it. And so I then decided to get my master's in public administration in the hopes of getting to be a part of that system and in alter things. It also stems from my own experiences growing up in the system, seeing how my brothers fared versus me and all the things that impacted that. And so luckily I was able to end up getting a job on the State Board of Education, which was kind of my ultimate goal at the time. I did previously work for the Seattle Community Colleges system, working directly with like Seattle Public Schools, Shoreline Public Schools, and doing some work there. So I got to get a nice kind of in-depth knowledge of local policy. And so now I work for the state board, but I get to bring that idea of community engagement and how we ensure that the folks who have historically been kept out of our policymaking process can actually be brought into it. It's something I really enjoy about my job is getting to work in a new way that our policy system historically has not worked at all, and really focus on marginalized communities and not only informing them about how our system works, because they may not have actually heard that before or may have some ideas about it that are or are not true, and really get to work with our board and staff in changing how we operate to ensure that the folks who haven't gotten to participate in the past or have been intentionally blocked out of it get to be brought into that. Yeah, so that's where I'm at.
Sure, I can go next. So I'm still pretty new at the public sector. I just graduated last year. And so before doing MBA, I was a software engineer full-time for 8 years. And I've always worked at private sector. And I think as I was becoming more and more aware of like how these big private corporations are doing harm to the world and like the climate change, I was drifting away from what I was contributing to these organizations. And my last company was Microsoft, and when I joined them in 2020, I started doing volunteering work outside, like alongside Microsoft, just to gain clarity, like what area I could go into next. And so I worked with many nonprofit organizations, both in US and India. And I soon realized that I want to make public sector a full-time thing. And so I joined NPA. And yeah, I'm so proud of myself of doing that. I've enjoyed each and every course here, like throughout, like I think the whole package was really eye-opening, enlightening, and the best thing that I've done for myself. So in MPA, I think my public sector experience really started outside of the coursework, of course, when I started working for Zero Waste Washington as an intern. I did a summer internship there and extended it till winter. And so I got to do a lot of policy analysis work, and I learned like how data collection is done in the public sector and how like you do data management for administrative data. And I was blown away by the fact that this is such a small organization. It has been running with just 5 or 6 people and has been there for like more than 50 years and has created such great impact. So just like looking at what they do and how they do it was really impactful for me. And then this led to my capstone project at King County Solid Waste Division. And I really enjoyed learning about like even at the coursework, like learning about community and engagement, doing qualitative analysis apart from the quantitative analysis. And so yeah, it was like I felt like every work that's happening is very purpose driven and very resourceful, because there are always like lack of resources in the sector, so you cannot just like do bullshit work with it. And so yeah, that's how public sector happened. And after like working with these 2 organizations and also like doing coursework in quantitative analysis, and like I took a bunch of other analysis coursework and ended up specializing in the analysis and evaluation space. And so I figured that data analysis is my strength and it would be easier to pursue that for now, although like I I think when I was doing analysis and evaluation, I wanted to be more on the policy analysis side. But I guess like this is a step towards that. But I'm really enjoying what I'm doing right now at my organization.
Hi, everyone. Micah, as I said, and as it says right here, I was an undergrad back in Missouri, where I'm from. I was history and Spanish. That was my undergrad, and I, aside from just retail jobs or whatever, uh, some education experience. I was a substitute teacher, and I worked in daycares and stuff. But I didn't really have a sense of like career, figure that out. And then I heard about Peace Corps, teaching abroad. And so I went that route. I lived in Korea for a while. I was an English teacher. I lived in China. I did Peace Corps teaching. And when I was in China and a part of Peace Corps has a program where you can get like a fellowship money for grad school. I was like, that's cool. Get grad school paid for. I didn't work out that way, but I was like on their site looking for like just grad school programs that offered this fellowship. And I stumbled upon a public policy, public administration degree. I was just like, oh, what's that? That sounds kind of cool. I could like run an airport. Like I had no idea. But that then locked me into something that, formal education is something I care about, which is making a difference, public service, which I was already kind of on that track. So moved to Seattle, got a job at a nonprofit with the goal of hopefully getting into Evans. Luckily, it worked out because I only applied in one place. And I was already here. So I went from, nonprofit like food bank to Evans, where I pivoted to really being focused on local government and like public budgeting in particular. And then shaped my Evans career. I graduated with an MPA in 2015, shaped my Evans career to really work in government, which is really and local government in particular, which is what I care about. I was lucky enough to get an internship at Seattle Public Utilities right when I started Evans. So I did it the first like 18 months of my Evans career. And then I got a couple other internships and focused throughout Evans on that, trying to get real tangible experience, which I'm sure we'll talk about more in depth. But then was lucky enough to get 9 years ago when I graduated from Evans, this job at Bellevue. It was a different role, but this job that, and I've been there ever since. So I do currently performance and outreach coordinator. I'm on the business intelligence team. And so we do like data analytics, data viz, performance management, organizational development, strategic planning, continuous improvement, process improvement, like that kind of stuff. So not only is it, interesting and necessary, but it's where and close to my heart, but it's, in my opinion, well, not even an opinion, it's literally a lot of the stuff they teach you at Evans, like in real life. Like we're working in an organization like, hey, do you want to like use data to achieve community outcomes? Hey, you want to like use DEI, figure out how to make DEI work? It's like literally case studies in real life. Honestly, it's awesome. With all of the challenges and with all of the, the benefits and the, the ups and downs and stuff. But yeah, that was the journey. We're going to talk more about a lot of different things, but I'm a total Evans fanboy. It was good to me. And I think there are ways to really make it work for you, regardless of what you want to do.
Zan, I was in the executive MPA, graduated in 2020. I've been working here at the UW for 12 years. I have and you can tell from glasses, I have a funky background. I was a theater major. I didn't know what I wanted to do for grad school, so I never did grad school. So I did 20 years of different kind of administrative work, both in corporate and nonprofit. Found out that I really like working for a mission I can respect. And so that kind of, I was doing some fundraising as a volunteer, and then I did the fundraising certificate here at UW. That led me, and then a couple of years later, into finally getting a job here. And I worked for the College of the Environment. I think around 2016, 2017, I started feeling like, okay, the world is messed up and I want a better toolkit to be a better leader. And I'm looking around and I'm not finding strong leadership role models. And I'm like, well, okay, how do I learn some skills where at least I can lead from where I'm at better, if not decide to do anything different. And so that's when I started exploring doing the EMPA. So I worked during doing that whole degree. And it has been very impactful in the sense of taking so many of the tools and frames that Evan teaches you and of being able to suddenly look at things when you're working, whether you're in a small organization, which I continue to do occasionally as a volunteer, or working in a large one and looking at a bureaucracy and understanding systems. And sometimes no longer feeling the frustrations that you take out on yourself, that you're like, I can't make this work. Is it me? And then, oh, no, this is a way bigger systemic structural issue. Okay, what can I do to try to fix it? And I am grateful for the things that I learned here at Evans.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Some of you kind of touched on our next question a little bit, thinking about positions or experiences that you had that helped prepare you for your current work. Because some of you talked about the impact that the Evans School has had on you. Maybe that wasn't your experience. And so maybe there were different things, professional experiences, internships, volunteer work, a random conversation with a peer or a professor. I'd love to know, what do you feel like best prepared you for your current work? Thinking specifically about internships or jobs or a workshop you took or a conference you took. Knowing that a lot of these students might have to do an internship that you are required to do for your program. So thinking about that. You don't have to. If someone else wants to start, they can.
Happy to, if you don't.
Yeah, go for it.
Mix it up. So, I mean, Evans in general really did prepare me for it. I think by itself it does, because, you know, regardless of how you feel about it now or how stressed you are, or this class is good, that class is not, whatever, like it is, you know, a very top tier public administration, public policy program. And in my opinion and experience, they provide you education and opportunities that can be useful. I mean, you're going to have to focus on, you know, like the aspects they identify about like leadership, management, budgeting, et cetera. Like it's going to apply even if you don't continue on in the public sector. And so for me, the things specifically that were really helpful, I got an internship at Seattle Public Utilities. I knew I wanted to go the government route. And so getting as close as possible to that experience, even though I was a policy and procedure intern, which basically meant that I was just like documenting stuff in a records office, but I was at least getting exposed to an area that I, you know, was adjacent and learned maybe I do want to do this, maybe I don't. And resume bullets, cover letter experience, you know, interview question, fodder, that kind of stuff. So that was super helpful. As much as possible in internships, in your coursework, if you can't fit in an internship, at least maybe not a long one, as much specific and relevant experience as possible, I think is super helpful. It was for me. So I was particularly interested in budgeting and finance and municipal government. And back in 2013, when I started, it like really didn't exist as a kind of like a function, or, I mean, they had, you know, 522 is the budget one, right? They had 522 at the time, so that was good. But aside from that, there wasn't a government focus. I had to cobble together classes and all that. But it was as close to as possible to what I actually wanted to do. And it's not to say I really knew what I wanted to do, or you have to know what you want to do, because also the point of it is like, well, what do I like? You know what I mean? You have an idea coming in, which is why you're here. But my internship and taking as specific coursework as possible was really helpful, because it not only, like I said, gave me like resume material, but it helped me test out like, do I actually like this? Do I want to do this? And then another thing that was, thing that really prepared me was, I got connected to the local government professional association, and it was enormously helpful. Not only does it kind of like connect you or make you think about or get exposure to some of the topics that are in the field that you're interested in, but also it gets you connected to the people. So maybe it's not, government, maybe it's a topic area, like I'm really interested in environmental policy or nonprofit management. Go find the professional associations that are out there, because those are real topics that you may want to do and real people that you may want to do. And also, almost all of them, the conferences and the associations, they have like student rates that are either free or like dramatically reduced. And at the very least, it's an identification of people that you can just like, hey, can we grab a coffee? Can we talk? Those were really impactful for me and things I always recommend.
I'll just quickly leverage off of that. Just be curious. I think for the most part, generally, when you encounter people, whether you're doing an internship or you're doing a job, or even if it's a temp assignment, ask people what is their journey. I mean, it's kind of these same kind of questions, because the more that you make personal relationships, I mean, I work in philanthropy and it is a relationship-driven business, is the take advantage of any opportunity you can to be curious, to learn about people's stories. And if you can just, be patient and sit with them and hear from their path, that's what's going to really help you figure out, then ask for them, oh, do you have someone else I can talk to? And build that professional network at any level. And that's going to help you open doors to your careers, as well as new experiences you may never have conceived of.
Go next. So I would say a lot of courses have helped me in getting to where I'm at with Surfer. We call it Surfer Snow Retrieval Fire Rescue. And I think most of all was capstone. I feel like because I didn't have the public sector experience, it really helped me solve a real world problem and apply all the skills that I'm learning here in like one project. And it was a really good experience. And I feel like when I was interviewing for this role, they were most interested in learning like as much details about my capstone work as opposed to my software engineering work. We've also done like data analysis. And I think like this is also because this was most relevant to them. I did work to map and find and map the disadvantaged communities in King County. And in my current role, I closely work with public education officers, and they have to create like community awareness programs. And I'm able to like basically think how this thing works and how to approach like such an ambiguous problem. I think Evans really helped me shape my thought process and like put structure there.
So I sort of struggle with this one. I will say there was a particular class. It was a management and leadership course that Mary Kay Grudy taught. And I feel like that was extremely helpful because it wasn't about any like outside content. It was like the class was focused on how are we in the classroom working together. We were in different groups and had to do kind of an arbitrary project, but it was all about how do we function together? How do we communicate? How do we think broadly? How do we utilize the like particular skill sets people in our group had? And so I find that really useful in life in general, but in particular in the role that I'm in now. I think when you get into work, and this is speaking from the type of role that I'm in, I think there's some really like technical things. If you're doing budget analysis, like a class like that is obviously going to be extremely helpful, and there's specific things you need to know. But when you're in the world of having to just talk with people, when you're in the world of having to analyze a policy, when you're in the world of having to figure out how is this going to harm or benefit somebody, that is about relationships and how you talk with people and being in this like willingness to open up your mind past how it's landing with you to really hear how it's landing with other people. And so I think as I'm in this work, there are skills in memo writing, you have to write really quick brief things to legislators when you're trying to help them introduce a bill. And you have to get that across really succinctly, and so those types of technical skills. But you have to be able to talk with folks. And so I think what was really helpful for me was just the other groups that I was connected to. While I was in this program, I was working like 50 hours a week. I couldn't attend these types of sessions. It just wasn't realistic for me. And I was lucky enough that I had been living here for a while. So I had a nice group of like community organizers who I would meet with and who were friends. And so I got to get that like broader view that wasn't happening in the classroom. I was also one of the few students of color, and we would all get together and meet and talk about what's missing from our classes that they're not talking about, that they're not addressing, that they're not preparing us to be really broad thinkers about. And I would say that was actually the most helpful piece as I move forward in my career. So I would just urge you to spread out who you talk to, think broadly, as Micah was mentioning, try to go to conferences that are like outside of your comfort zone, because it's going to give you another frame of thinking. It's going to allow you to see how something is landing for somebody else that's outside of how it might for you. And that is really powerful, especially as you are like talking with legislators and you need to get that point across. And yeah, just any opportunities you have to broaden that.
Really appreciate that there is kind of a diverse experience that you all were kind of sharing in relation to your classes. And sometimes those classes help prepare you for the exact thing that you're going to do. Sometimes they don't. And I think like Ariel is sharing, being able to know that your network is also your peers, the other students around you. And if there's something missing, to be able to really maybe bring that up or create that space together. I think that's a really awesome reminder as well.
I'll also add that as someone who also didn't like come from this world, like I was the first in my family to go to college and had no idea what grad school looked like or what I needed to be doing or how I need to connect with my professors, because that's going to turn around and be important if I need like a letter of recommendation and need them to call for a job or anything like that. Like I didn't walk away with any of that. And oh God, where was I going with this? Nope, I'll come back to that. Lost it.
That's okay. Well, I want to also talk about, I think you were able to share some moments where you had a really powerful conversation with a peer or some of your classmates. So I'd love to know, this doesn't have to do with Evans, this could be a conversation you had with your family member or a friend. Was there a pivotal moment or lesson that you learned that helped shape your professional journey so far?
I mean, I'll just, the class in the EMPA that I hated the most was the negotiation weekend. I'm a conflict adverse person. And some of the case, like we did a whole 9/11 one, and I was in tears the whole day during the negotiation because I was representing the families in it. I am still a little scarred from that exercise to this day. But I use the lessons from that class every single day. And especially because when we talk about like with philanthropy, and there's a lot of conversation in the philanthropic space. It used to be very donor centered, and now we're talking about community centered, or especially whoever you're serving, not necessarily bending to the will of donors, but looking for the viable spaces where you can get a donor's interest and the community needs in alignment to really make a joyful philanthropic gift space. And I know that I work every day with, I'm in the kind of donor services space, but I work hand in hand with a lot of fundraisers who go into them. And some of them, when they're starting out in their career, they tend to be like, okay, I just want to get the gift. I want to get a yes. And I'm like, no, you are a negotiator. I want you to know what you're walking in, what is your bat now, what is your what now, what's gonna make you walk from the table, what is the donor gonna walk from the table? And just being able to have that language really changed the way I approach philanthropy and approach just any kind of business skill, and taking a little element of the personal out and giving a structure of this is how you can work with people and come to a mutual, oh, what is it? The ZOPA, the zone of, oh gosh, you can see how much the Evans program is stuck in my brain. But essentially when you both agree to the same terms of your agreement, they're gonna come back and get me for this. But that's one of those takeaways that you have. And so it may be that if you're really struggling, lean into that, because that might be some of the lessons that you will take away and use in your daily life for the rest of your career.
So I think a pivotal moment that comes to my mind is when I was working for Microsoft. Before that, I had my experience only working in India, and when I joined Microsoft here, I was really impressed by their like how they value like growth mindset, and how they basically just like working in an environment where everyone can focus on individual strengths rather than weaknesses. I think that has really helped me being successful in like working in a team and delivering with a team. And nothing Evan's side. Sorry, I can't think of a pivotal moment.
It's
Like,
It
yeah, I
just
think I had
happened.
like, yeah, it just happened. Right?
Prior to this role that I'm in now, I worked for the Seattle Community Colleges District, and like I said, working with the some local public school districts. And when I graduated, that was the space that I thought I wanted to be in. More, local with our school system. We have a very local control education system, and so I was assuming that would be the space where perhaps I could see quicker progress, which is not true. And but so working in that for a few years and trying to get a program off the ground that was intended to help students who maybe had a specific path. In this case, it was tech focused. And connecting them with the Seattle colleges to have like this warm handoff and get some undergraduate credit while they were still in high school. And, it was a whole thing that sounds really good on face value, but then trying to get that off the ground was really, really impossible. In working with the school districts and just kind of the recognizing all of the policies and competing interests that they have to take into account. And so it was really nice to have that experience and then be able to have the understanding of what is happening at the local level. But it definitely highlighted for me that there are bigger things at the state level that then impact what the local level is allowed to do. We think, oh, well, it's local control, so they get to make their own decisions, but it's within the context of what the state is saying. And it also made me realize how little the state is listening to the local context, which is why I decided to make that switch to the state level. So just say that job and going into what you think it is you want to do, and keeping your mind open and realizing, oh, hey, nope, it is actually time to pivot, was huge for me and significantly here.
I would say one moment that ended up being really pivotal was when my very first Evans teacher, Justin Marlowe, who taught budget 522, it was Monday, 8 a.m. So it was literally the first possible minute of grad school for me. And in his opening spiel, he was just like, if you're interested in local government, but also like anything related to budgeting or finance, like there's not a lot of us, let me know, come and we can talk about your career. So he made an offer. Next week I was in his office. I'd be like, how do I do this? And he was very specific about you know, with advice about classes I could take if I wanted, professional associations I could tap into, type of projects I could focus on that would prepare me. So not only was it pivotal because it set me on the path that I'm on now, but it also really hammered home the lesson that take people up on their offer. If they say like, "Hey, I'm happy to meet, I have office hours," or shoot me an email or at me on LinkedIn, like do it. Because the lessons that uh, that moment and others taught me that are still true to this day are that people are largely people. People like talking about themselves. And uh, most of the time, people remember where they came from. They remember what it was like to not have a job yet, to be early career, to not know a path yet. And it costs you basically nothing but time to meet with them for 30 minutes and talk. And there's a way that you can do it to be successful. And, regardless of your, personality, introvert, extrovert, whatever you're comfortable with, there are ways to navigate those conversations, but take people up on their offer because people like to talk.
Going to kind of pivot to a different type of a question. Knowing that life can get hard and sometimes the day-to-day is not always the most enjoyable thing, I'd love to know what brings you fulfillment in your work and how do you stay motivated when setbacks happen?
I work primarily in the space of community engagement for policy, and in particular, care deeply about diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, all of that, and that is in particular, right now, a really hard place to be in, and so as I am going out and speaking with folks, I am talking about what the current lay of the land is and hearing feedback and really hard stories to hear. But I get to turn around and share that with staff and board members and make sure that conversation continues. I get the opportunity to invite community members into a board meeting and talk directly one-on-one with board members or host a panel of high school students who get to talk about their experiences in the school and actually have that heard. What brings me the most fulfillment in doing that is being given the time to go back to those same folks and share with them what progress has happened because of what they shared. And because of that, I get to build some really great relationships where we talk back and forth. And so when I receive an email that says, wow, thank you, this mom got to come and do this and connect, and it's the first time that they felt like they were actually heard because they received feedback afterwards. Like frequently we do engagement and it's just like, come bring me what you have, and then we walk away. There's not necessarily closing of the loop or keeping a loop. And so I'm really glad that I get to do that and continue to hear back from these folks and know that this is changing something for them, that they then go and talk to other people about it, and that there is progress being made. And I just keep that in my head every single time someone says something really hurtful or harmful, which happens often.
For me, most fulfillment at work, I would say, since I'm pretty new, I also really get fulfilled if I'm able to apply a skill directly that I've just learned at Evans and just post about it. But apart from that, I feel like I'm attached to a work if I'm able to solve a problem, like a new problem or a complex problem. And if I know like how it's impacting the organization or just as a whole, if there's a positive impact. And for the environment side, it really matters to me that I have trust in the teammates and that I'm given autonomy of my work style and how I want to approach any problem. And on the second part of the question, so when setback happens, I think over the years, through my experience, I've learned to see the bigger picture. And if there's like reasonable sense behind like why my work is like, there are certain times when your project is just put into trash. Like if there's like a reasonable point behind like maybe this is not like a good thing for the organization that we realize after a point, or if it's like benefiting the bigger picture, then I feel like I I don't get too attached to the outcomes that I produce.
I'm fulfilled, very lucky to do something that I'm passionate about, which is service generally, government specifically, and I am making change. And I do, in my position, have a good amount of autonomy to pursue things as I want. There's always a balance. I'm not a one person, dictator, but I do have the ability to affect change. Partly because of Evans, I'm aware that there's changes at many levels. So if there's something that's happening within my organization citywide or external, like in the community, that I can't change, but it impacts me and it's frustrating, I have perspective that there is something I can impact. I have the ability to learn. That's important to me as a person, that I'm always learning. And then what fulfills me too is the culture that I'm a part of. The culture at City of Bellevue is excellent. It's like 1,900 people basically, so it's not so huge. It's big, but it's medium sized in government terms. But the culture fulfills me. The people fulfill me, despite the ups and downs. And not everybody's great. Not everybody's awesome, but the work truly does keep me fulfilled. And then what do I do when setbacks happen? Well, first of all, acknowledge that setbacks will happen. And there will be things that you expect and things that you don't expect. You can expect that they will happen. What keeps me going through that, many things, but remember why you're doing this. If you don't believe in what you're doing, or you can't understand the why the setback happened, it's going to be harder to deal with. Use your Evan skills to diagnose technical, organizational, interpersonal problems. Someone acted a certain way to you. What's going on for them? Or this decision was made. I don't agree with it. Well, how did they make it? Is there anything I can do about it next time? Thinking about what's happening and knowing where my place is in that, knowing if I have to accept it or not, all that's a part of kind of managing the setbacks, because they will happen. And bringing it back to Evans, it truly helped me to be able to diagnose and understand and put things in perspective, and it gives you a network of people that you can connect to about this, even if you don't know the people yet. Friend of a friend of a friend, colleague of a colleague of a colleague. Oh, you do this. Hey, can we talk about something? Maybe you can solve problems together, or maybe you can just get some therapy, professional therapy. Like tap into the network that will help you weather the ups and downs.
I think fulfillment is knowing that you can have a role in creating impact. In philanthropy, it's that when you can get a donor excited who wants to make an investment, and then the money can be put to use, and then you can report back on the difference it made in a student's life, and a faculty member's life, and the progression of research. There are plenty of setbacks. I think, how to struggle through that, whether it's people or, the biggest thing here at UW has been, if you've read the papers, we got a new finance system called Workday. You can ask any staff member and they'll wince. But Evans helped with some change management stuff and knowing that, okay, the system has flaws, the people who are trying to top down do training has flaws. So I was like, okay, I learned from Evans. Oh, what about my informal network? Tapping into a whole bunch of my peers and saying, hey, look, we're not going to be given the handbook about how to use this and how to do our jobs. So let's have our own informal network and information sharing. So, oh, you found that report. Oh, is that what that data point means? And figure out how you can use some of the skills that Evans gives you to be able to make it. You can continue that impact, just might not be in the way you thought you would get it. So be creative.
I have one last formal question, and then we'll open it for you all to ask your questions. A lot of folks are applying to internships, to jobs. You're looking further out. So what is the best career or application advice you've received, or you wish someone gave you that maybe you didn't get?
I remembered what I was going to say earlier. It relates to it is not coming from this space, but like the reality is, and as much as I on a personal level dislike this, but just simply having graduated from the Evans School will do a lot for you. I think I was actually shocked by how much it is talked about in my professional life, and people always ask the question, and then you say like, oh, I went to Evans, and then it's like, oh, so did I, and then they introduce you to 3 other people in the room who did too. Like that really does happen, and it's very helpful for networking and everything. But I think for me, for starting a career, having been someone who wasn't able to attend these sorts of things and wasn't taught how to network during like undergrad or grad school or anything, applying for my first job after graduating, and also growing up in the time where we still told kids going to college is going to be this big door opener. Luckily, we've gotten away from telling people that, but it was the most disheartening year and a half of applying for jobs that I ever experienced. And I wish I would have had someone maybe who, not that I wish that experience on anybody else, but who could have been there reminding me that that does not say anything about my worth, that the hiring experience is very much about who you know and who you don't know, and what little tiny random thing in a cover letter is going to stick out to someone. So now, having been someone who has been a part of 7 different hiring committees for different roles, and seeing what the process is like, just know it is not a reflection of you or what you know or what your worth is or what you could bring to the table. They're making guesses about how well somebody is going to do. So not that it's not going to be discouraging, but try not to let it discourage you. Yeah.
I will say thank you. Yeah, and I hate interview process. Like I never want to undergo that, but we have to. So the best application advice that was given to me was by Rachel. So please use her and her team a lot. So I think I started applying in December, like 2 quarters ahead, and after facing multiple rejections, I reached out to her, and she gave a simple advice that like don't have a generic resume, like create a different resume for each and every application, like start looking at it with a fresh view, like you can just scrap off the whole thing and like read the job description really well and like highlight the bullet points that they're looking for or they're repeating multiple times, and make sure you use those words if they speak to your profile somewhat, make sure you use those words in your application. And by doing that, oh God, that changed the whole game. So, and the other thing I would say is because I had a private sector experience of 8 years, I wasn't sure, like, I didn't want to join at entry level, but I wasn't sure, like, at what level I would qualify for the government side. And each department had their own names for roles, like their own openings. It was so hard to figure out, like, where I would fit in. So just going into the, what do you call these, career fairs, just going there with your resume, and a lot of these booths have like HRs or people who would basically interview you. Just like show your resume and say, like, do you think I fit into your organization? And if you think, like, just tell me like which role. So that used to make like it very simple. Okay. And once you know like few roles, then you get a sense of it, and then you like then it becomes easier to apply and see through like which roles you're more fitted in.
I guess a few little things. Uh, as much as possible, I think it's a good idea, and it certainly benefited me to get practical, tangible skills and experience. I had many people like in my cohort, for example, who they didn't really know what they wanted to do, but they were like interested in a lot of different topics. And so they kind of got a lot of different topics, and a lot of them were kind of like researchy. It's like, oh, I'm interested in smoking cessation. Oh, I'm interested in, homelessness policy. Oh, I'm interested in cost benefit. And so they'd get all these things. And it made them intellectually more well-rounded. Sometimes, though, it's really hard unless you want to go into that specific area. Like, I'm a housing person. I want to go deep into housing. Sometimes it doesn't resonate as much when your experience is, I did a lot of research. So what was helpful for me are practical things that I could talk about. So, I mean, internship, capstone, like as close as possible, do those in areas that you either want to do or you may want to do. So then you can then talk about them. And then don't be afraid to like take like the case studies that you do, the analyses you do for a course, make that a resume bullet, right? Like you do an analysis and you have to write the memo and blah blah blah. But like don't say like, yeah, and I did an analysis, like or I read a case study. Like what analysis did you do? Oh, I did an analysis of a public sector, swimming pool RFP, something like just use that real tangible experience, even if it was just academic. Who cares if it's just academic? Like it sticks in people's minds. More tactical, practical things. Look at the resume bullet, look at the job description bullets. Almost always, especially if it's good, that's literally what you're going to be doing. So speak to those, use their words, research the organization. And if you have any opportunity to like write, or when you get to the interview stage, talk about it, research the organization, use some of their words. And it's okay if you get the words wrong. You don't work there. So, or your earlier career, who cares? But the fact that you research it is really easy to tell. If you're at all interested, even if you're kind of faking it, it comes across in the interview. Like, and it sticks in the interviewer. On the job description, like contact for more information, even if it's like HR, whatever, contact them. Be like, hey, I'd like to learn more. They can just say no, but maybe, like I know at the city of Bellevue, that's a real person, or HR can direct you to a real person. They can put you directly in touch for the hiring manager. Have a 20-minute phone conversation, ask about the role. Yeah, that's it.
My piece of advice is from a mentor I have, and if you have the opportunity to find a mentor, highly recommend it. It can help you, even just having someone to be a sounding board. But essentially, when it came to philanthropy, his advice was, if you want advice, ask for money. If you want money, ask for advice. And I think the same thing is if you're going for a career or job is not necessarily selling yourself for the job as it is asking them for advice of how would a candidate succeed for this job. I think you will get more of a robust back and forth in any kind of job interview if you take that approach. Because essentially they're looking for someone to fill a need. And so for you to have that curiosity and ask for that sense of advice will hopefully open up a deeper engagement.
One other thing quickly, sorry,
Go for
you
it.
done?
Yep.
In the interview itself, I'm I am a manager, I've been on so many interview panels, I've hired so many people. At the very end, if they're all good, they will ask you, do you have any questions for them? Use every single minute to ask them questions. If you say, so I don't have any questions, they're all answered. Just, maybe you're still awesome and maybe you would be hired, but to me, it's like, they don't care. They have me unfiltered, unadulterated for 15, 20 more minutes and they don't care. They don't care to ask any questions. Ask, even if they're dumb questions, just ask, get specific, ask.
A specific question that people seem to really enjoy is just asking each person on that interview committee, what is it that they enjoy about their job? What keeps them coming back? Then they'll dive into a story because people like to talk about themselves. And then that gives you more information for more follow-up questions to ask if it was difficult to prepare questions for that section in advance.
Because you're interviewing them as well.
Yeah.
So being able to ask about, why do you do what you do? What brings you back? Then you can see, do I fit in with the culture of this team as well? Because sometimes it's hard to tell when you're on that side of the camera or the table. Yeah, well, thank you so much. It's encouraging and really enlightening to hear a lot of your stories. I'd love to open this up for you all to ask your questions now. So now's the time to practice. What questions do you have?
Hi, my name is Chris. Thank you so much for coming here. It's been so helpful for me at least. I worked before coming to Evans this year at the Boys and Girls Clubs of Bellevue, actually, on the fundraising team. And I guess this is maybe a question specifically for you, Micah. You spoke about being in the nonprofit sector, kind of pre-Evans, before going into municipal government. What do you think drove that transition? I guess what keeps you around? That's kind of the space I'm thinking in right now. Less the fundraising side, nonprofit side, and yeah, I'm just kind of curious what drives you in that regard. Is it to me, I guess I would just add, I am interested in the budgeting element. And there's a side of it that's really sort of like, it's fascinating problems, materials. But then where do you sort of locate your passion in that? What are the experiences where you locate your passion?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. Generally for me, I am passionate about local government in particular. One, because it is and always will be the level of government that you will have the most interaction with. Doesn't matter where you are, what you do, you will interact with your local government more because it's where you get your pet licensed. It's where the water comes out of the tap, all that stuff. And I mean, I am biased for smaller because bigger is more powerful. And she really hit on some of the really great aspects of working at the state level because you are dictating in massive scale, also massive scale. So find your thing. I keep coming back to it because not only does it really touch on people's lives around here, pays well, back where I'm from in Missouri, it does not. But also, sounds like total BS, but like, it really is where we're like solving all those problems in the world. Like, it is where the rubber meets the road, and specifically also all that stuff you're learning about in Evans, like literally in the local government I'm at, like it's happening in real life. So it keeps me coming back because, you hear in the news, you have feelings about things because of the news, like we were talking about, and about what doesn't work, what we should do, what we shouldn't do. This is what we should. In my actual job, it's making all that stuff work. or it's seeing the reality. Where it's like, okay, yeah, this is an idea, but like in reality, it's maybe a little more of this, a little less of that. Either way, this is how we have to kind of execute on this. That keeps me coming back because it is not only just like interesting and I'm always learning, but also it keeps my heart happy, service, So,
Thank you.
Yeah, hi, I'm Riley. Thank you all for taking the time out of your day to be here. I really appreciate it. Especially since I've been like overwhelmed with school because it's a lot. Really excited though about all of it. But one question that I had for all of you is it's really cool to see the kind of jobs that I'll see on job boards and people like yourselves who actually do them. But sometimes it could feel very like grand in the sense of like I'm a data analyst or I'm a performance manager, and I look at it and I'm not sure exactly like what you do on a day-to-day basis. So I was wondering if you all could speak to like maybe one specific project that you completed recently that's specific to your role that you were excited about, because I think that could kind of help me get like a tangible sense of what it is you actually do.
Sorry. Thank you for your question. So at my role, just a general overview of what I just joined 5 months back. And so in general, I'm supposed to work on performance metrics for the annual compliance report. And then we have a data standards committee where all the fire departments, like data analysts from all the fire departments come and you're supposed to have data standards for the county. But like a recent project that I worked at that got me really excited was where I was able to use my quantitative analysis skill. It was called the efficient resource deployment. So they wanted to understand like at each fire department, like what would be the most efficient deployment mechanism, as they wanted to do some like shuffling. Can we remove this medic car from here and can we redeploy it to some other station? And what would be the impact on the community, like where there's more demand? So just doing that analysis, and it was like overwhelming in the start just because of the nuances, like the operational nuances that fire department goes through. But then being able to and there's like you don't have like the full set of data always. So with the limited data that you have, how can you drive results and show like what confidence level you have on the data? So that was really exciting.
So I work at the State Board of Education, and it is state government, and our team we're a really small agency, so we have 13 staff in comparison to the Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction, who has almost 500, in comparison to the City of Bellevue, who has 1,500. We're a very small agency. And so my title is Program and Policy Manager, but it's everything. Our staff works on everything together. So, for example, one of the things that we're in charge of is high school graduation requirements. And we are starting a process to take a look at graduation requirements in a really holistic way. We're getting a task force together. That is a collection of folks from various sectors and includes community liaisons who are going to be centered in that conversation. It's bringing in legislators. It involved writing to ask for money to be able to do this process, talking with legislators to get them to pause on forcing us to add new graduation requirements without consulting with us. And so there's just like a lot of random bits of work, and every day it's kind of like a new fire. So it's really hard to say like what specific things are happening. Something I was able to do though is write 4 contracts for the year with community-based organizations, knowing that we have a specific question we need answered. So how do students use their high school and beyond plan? What would make it more effective? So I wrote contracts with these 4 organizations, to give them money to go out and do listening sessions and work directly with the communities that they are closely connected to, because state government is not, and allow them to provide feedback to us and meet with community members to hear what they would like to see for the high school and beyond plan. So we've received that information back, and so currently I'm writing a report to the legislature, asking them or giving them recommendations for what might need to be changed about the high school and beyond plan. So it's been like a nice kind of fulfilling full circle thing that's gotten to happen over the past year.
That's really cool.
Yeah, but oftentimes it's just like, we're on Microsoft Teams all the time, talking about, I probably have 7,000 messages right now, because it's session.
University advancement here is I think about 600 people. It includes marketing and communications, but there are some central services. There's also teams like Evans has a team. I work for the College of the Environment with a team of 13. So with donor services, essentially, I'm just helping with working with fundraisers as they're talking with donors, hearing what the donors want to do, what they can do, what they can't do. We have gift policies and just trying to make sure that this is good for the university as well as for the donor, and then guide them through the whole fund setup. There's legal agreements, and then receiving the gift, and then hopefully making sure that the funds are deployed, and then collecting the stories from students and faculty, and then report back to the donor of this is what your philanthropy helped make happen at the university. And if it works, it's great. Doesn't always work, but that's the challenge of the job.
So to answer your question, business intelligence team, performance and outreach coordinator, what does that mean? Yeah. Yeah. It's like, well, like, what?
Just words strung together.
Exactly. I tangent, but like people ask me what I do, and I have to have like it's like, oh, you know, I'm a local government. Like an urban planner, not really, but whatever. And I told basically what I'm about to say to a friend's dad who like drove truck all, you know. I was just like, yeah, that's what I do. I'm on the BI team. I do, you know, data and analytics, a little bit of evaluation, strategic planning, some process improvement. And he waited. And I really condensed it because he was a good old boy and really nice, but you know, whatever. He waited, you know, he's like, so you do nothing. I was just like, yeah, no. You got to know your audience and, you know when to quit. So, but I do all those things. One very specific example. So I don't lead people through strategic planning, but I'm on I connect to the strategic planning piece because one, I help people identify, evaluate, and measure and manage to performance indicators. And then just generally speaking, after you have a strat plan, like you don't want it to just sit on the shelf, right? You want to make it usable. So right now, something I worked on yesterday, the city of Bellevue has its DEI plan. It's a 10-year plan. I mean, there's an entire team, the DEI team, plus others that are like making it happen. And that's leading leadership, not stuff that I do. Leading leadership through kind of like brainstorming, strategic kind of conversations, where are our guiding principles, blah, blah, blah. And it's going to be adopted by council, hopefully in June. And then it's like, okay, now how do we make this actually mean something and work and not just be like kind of flowery statements? So one of the, like, what it means in real life is we have these things we say we want to achieve, strategies we want to achieve. There's an entire group of people who have to take it to departments to say, okay, these are kind of like the objectives we want to achieve, the qualities and conditions that we want to see in the world, right? Department 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What are literally the activities you will do to kind of contribute to this? Equity in this space. Okay, well, fire department would do this, neighborhood outreach would do this, yada, yada, yada. And then also, okay, you can do stuff, but how do you know it's making any difference? That's where you can't just say like, well, we did it. As much as possible, you want to measure it, right? You all know that, Evans kids. Sorry, I call myself a kid as well. Evans fanboy. I sat yesterday. You have to have measurements attached to it. I sat yesterday with the main lead in the DEI office. We're like, okay, how can we lead an entire organization of 14 departments and in practice, like potentially hundreds of people, but certainly dozens of people to identify these indicators and actually like truly like commit to like gauging their progress on it. So we sat in a room yesterday and we were like, okay, process wise, we're gonna need to do some training to kind of remind them like why the DEI, why measurement, and then probably not in the same session, probably not even the same time period, then what are the measures? And then there's the back end data stuff to get it working. So we were yesterday creating slides because in our process, we need to take it to kind of a central team first, you know? TLDR, you're gonna do a lot of just like, we all do basically the same thing. We meet, we talk, we meet a lot. We send emails, we type. It's not all,
I mean, I think it's cool because you're doing something and like, there's steps to get to the objective that you end up having.
well, and what, kind of to his question earlier too, like, this thing that you want to get done, you're all mission focused, or you wouldn't be in Evanston, I'm pretty sure. Like, you want to make change, you don't know if you'd be here. Otherwise, how do you make it happen?
You can't do it alone.
You can't do it alone. You gotta meet.
Yeah.
You gotta have meetings.
Well, thank you.
So, what was your, how did you decide upon your capstone project and how did it help you in the placement process? Or when did you acquire it? Did you get the idea about it in your internship itself or, yeah?
My capstone is going to be probably different from your capstone, so you guys answer.
I didn't have to do a capstone.
Mm.
Yeah.
Wow.
But I don't know why we didn't, I had to do an internship. But why did I not have to? Maybe it was because of the focus that I was doing in prior experience, perhaps. I'm not sure, but I did not have to do capstone.
I can talk to it. So I did my internship in Zero Waste Washington, and I got really influenced by the waste sector, and I wanted to make it a full-time career. So I think I thought like I did a project in a course like social entrepreneurship. I also ended up choosing waste and working with a waste company, and so then capstone was a natural like choice. So I worked with King County Solid Waste Division. I was like, I think very clear after my internship, I would like to do something there. Did you ask another question?
Yeah, how did it help in the placement process?
Oh, the placement. Yeah. For me, I think the whole capstone experience, I was able to utilize in my interviewing and my application, like starting from how you conduct research and how data collection is done, why qualitative data is important, why not just quantitative, and then how like I also learned GIS on the way, so I was able to flaunt that skill and like what data sources were used and how I ended up basically creating a framework for ourselves, which guided us towards like how to find disadvantaged communities in King County. So this whole process I used in many interviews. And yeah, I think it was really helpful.
Do you still use GIS?
Yes, so I closely work with a GIS specialist in my role. So I don't have to do like the whole GIS, but having knowledge of how GIS works really helps in my role because like, she reports to me.
Evans had a list, and I think it's even more robust now, the options. None of them were at all what I wanted to do, so I did an independent one. I just like found a government that was like, oh yeah, hey, we could use this analysis, and I just brought it back. Evans discouraged it because it's extra administrative stuff for them, but I'm just like, I'm not gonna. Luckily, it worked out. I think it's a lot better now. I think you have a lot more options. I would say I've said it, but I think the capstone is one of the single greatest opportunities you have as an Evans person to get real, literal resume bullets, interview answers. Like you can just say like, even if it's not exactly what you want, is your ultimate type of work, organization, whatever. Like you get real world experience. You can talk about like XYZ thing, whether it's like really specific technical stuff or more broad, like we had to work with clients, things changed, people had feelings, like there's so many, it's really fertile ground for like specific examples, even if you've never literally had a job. Like it's real specific stuff you can talk about.
Yeah, and another learning while I was creating my application was not to put capstone under academic. I just feel like people ignore if you don't have a prior experience and if you just say academic experiences and capstone and internship and then coursework, they're less likely to look at your resume. Just like term it as for my project, I think I named it as equity consultant. Like, and then in the description you can say that it's the capstone, but just like those highlight like headings matter.
Questions?
As an undergraduate, like graduating without a lot of work experience and like you don't really know where to look for entry level. So what jobs did you guys look at when going to like entry level for public sector and like nonprofit work?
It's really hard because the entry level is like 2 to 3 years of experience. How do I get it if I don't have it? Like, it's just an impossible situation. Connect to people that are even tangentially connected to that role or an organization or similar work just to learn about it so you can have some of the words and understand the job a little bit. Professional associations. I was able to do volunteer work for that got me experience in an area. Like I did volunteer work with like a nonprofit that connected me, but then I went to some local government contacts I had. It was just like, I will not have a job. Do you need 8 hours a week? You know what I mean? Like there's certain opportunities depending on the organization, but it's essential. I mean, it's really hard. Like, consider like slightly like something to get your foot in the door. It's not your dream job, and maybe you have to like grind a little bit. You have to stick it out a little bit, but like getting your foot in the door, even if it's not exactly the role you want, is a way of kind of cracking it. But it's really hard.
Yeah, and also I think doing the internship in that space would help definitely if you are clear on like which type of department you want to go in.
So knowing if you have a place you would be interested in working, being willing to do a job that maybe doesn't necessarily connect to what it is you ultimately want to be doing, but that it gets you in the door and then you get to meet the folks and as stuff comes up, who you are, and you can move within, especially if you're having like a really hard time finding something that is directly connected on the types of places we want to work or hiring for things that are slightly off from it, but get you a foot in the door. But honestly, I was just constantly refreshing Indeed and LinkedIn and Shake and
Government jobs.
Government jobs,
Yeah,
yeah.
that was really interesting.
Is there like specific roles that you looked at or like started at when working in public sector?
For me, it was just anything ending with analyst. I had that filter on and it was sending me notifications like whenever like an analyst kind of role was popping up.
I knew I wanted to work in education broadly, and that was my filter. Literally anything.
Sometimes it's industry specific, like a lot of times the entry level in like government, that's still like full-time employment. It's like coordinator, specialist, analyst, sometimes. You kind of got to know the industry a little bit.
I'd also say don't shy away from temporary roles, or even part-time, especially if there's no background quite yet. again, it's kind of those like little stepping stones before you maybe get your dream job or end up in your dream organization or sector even. Yeah. Might be a bit of a long game. Other questions? Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Kevin, and thank you all for being here. And I have a question for Dana, right? Yeah, so I believe that most of our students in here, we are in the MPA program. So I'm very quite interested in EMPA program, and which course or the class material was the most interesting one for you when you were in the program? And since when you mentioned the negotiation part, I was so interested on that because that's the most part we're gonna do in our working enrollment. So would you please introduce it more?
I mean, the difference between the MPA and the EMPA is most people in the EMPA are working full time. Essentially, it's a full day Friday, Saturday, Sunday, every 6 to 8 weeks, and you do it for 18 months. So it made our case study analysis discussions really rich because people were bringing their work lives to the table. And that made it even more interesting because rather than kind of like doing analysis on a case study where you don't have any points of reference, I had classmates who were like, this is crap. You know, I'm sorry, you're gonna have this person tell the story. What about all these people left out of the frame? And it really made it exciting because it took it out of the academy and into real life. So I mean, I think that's as overall, that was a kind of like the very key takeaway. So I don't know how much MPA and EMPA intersect. It didn't do a lot when I was here, but we were also doing a dean search. And so actually we met a lot because members from both cohorts were attending some of the interview sessions. And it was really interesting to kind of be like, oh, you're having curriculum issues? We're having curriculum issues. Oh, you have issues with that professor? We're having issues with that professor. And it was just really interesting because it grounded us in a broader tapestry of the Evans experience, but yet the values we were all getting out of the program, even though it was different.
Would have been so wonderful to hear, like, starting in work and just realizing, like, yes, the conversations you're having within your classroom are important in your learning skills, but depending on who is in that class, like particularly in the MPA program, a lot of students are coming from not related work or directly out of undergrad. And so just the life experience and work experience and like reality of what actually happens on the ground is so different than what you talk about in the classroom. And getting to have the experience of hearing from folks who are actually working in the industry and coming back would have been so helpful for once you actually start your job and it's like, oh crap, this is nothing like what I anticipated, because the classroom cannot possibly recreate that without hearing from folks who are actually living it.
And I think the classes I most remember were the professors who brought the practitioners who were in the agencies, or like, you know, we studied a case study about something that went really bad at a public utility, and they brought in one of the employees who was the key in the lawsuit to tell her story. And it was like, okay, this is not just on paper, this is somebody's real life. And it just suddenly put it in a whole different context. And I think that's the, you know, yeah, anyway.
Seattle Public Utilities? That one?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah.
That might have been my old boss.
Maybe one last question before we wrap up.
Hi, my name's Emilio. So I think one of the issues we're facing, as someone who's on like the Evans student government side, one of the issues we're facing is low student engagement and just trying to get students like to get involved outside the classroom and come out to social events, whatever. Because I feel like a big part of the value of the MPA degree itself is the networking and connections you make at the school during our time here, and then transferring them out when we all leave Evans. So do any of you guys have any specific experiences, or can you speak a little bit about maybe the connections you made at Evans, how have they helped you after Evans? Like, you still keep in touch with your cohorts? Did they help you with your career now, or even like your day-to-day, like any specific projects? Like, oh, I have a friend who works here, let me give him a call or something, like anything like that.
I got the job that I'm in, not well, because obviously I'm totally qualified and skilled to do it. But my, the one person who I actually still talk to from my cohort, I have a few people on Instagram, I think. But the person who I talked with the most, and we would, you know, go over to Mob Pizza all the time, sit and do homework, and we both commuted into school, and she ended up getting to do her internship with the State Board of Education, and then when we graduated, she had majored in communications, so she actually went in as their communications person, even though she wanted to do policy, and now that is the role that she is in. But I saw the posting for this job that I have now, and I was like, oh, hey, Alyssa works there. Let me call her and see what she can tell me about the job without that being not something she's supposed to do. And then so getting to interview, and she wasn't on the interview panel, but obviously she could talk and give insights into who I was as a person to people. So like, I know that was a major reason why I got this role, because there was somebody who did know the work that I could do, the type of partnership that I could be in, and got to speak to that. And so that was obviously extremely useful. Networks are extraordinarily important. And now in my role, I see people who I like recognize. So I didn't necessarily connect with them or talk with them or anything, but I see them now, and it is an instant way that we can connect and like get down to work a lot quicker than having to do a lot of the conversation and getting to know you kind of stuff, which is really useful, because for as slow as government moves, it's also like super fast paced and things need to happen right when they need to happen.
I mean, it's been interesting because I graduated in 2020, in March of 2020, and our final weekend was right before everything shut down. So you know, I didn't get the graduation walking experience, but I have found that the network has continued. Didn't continue right away during the pandemic, so I don't know what a normal one feels like. But actually, in this past year, I've been more in touch with my cohort mates, and we've been hanging out and socializing, and you know, actually there was a text thread where someone was trying to organize a trip to Alaska because one of our cohort mates is in Anchorage and was trying to plan a trip. So, you know, sometimes it leads, I think, to job opportunities, but I think it also is the commonality of language of that you can gather, and like, okay, you can talk about frames, you can talk about organizational structure, you can talk about systemic organizational issues, and like there's a common language and a common frame of how you think about problems, and you know, maybe you can't necessarily solve them easily, but it's nice to have some other people who are kind of in the trenches trying to do the hard work, and it kind of it gives life to your spirits. There's also just Parrington Hall. I mean, I think that's the, you know, utilizing this space as a nexus of bringing people back, and getting different classes to network and meet each other. Because it's really not, I mean, that's really where your opportunities are going to come from, is meeting people and making those relationships.
LinkedIn can be your friend. I mean,
Yeah, anybody want to link me, find me on LinkedIn, I'm happy
yeah,
to.
I got cards. Yeah. Yeah. Connect. Oh, Evans, hey, I was 3 years earlier. Can we talk? Or hey.
Say, as you're thinking about creating things for students to be able to connect to, like as someone where that was like really scary to just be like, oh, hey, we're all meeting up to like grab dinner, or like things like that, where I have to then be the one to like initiate conversation or something. That's terrifying and really hard to get people to like buy into if they don't already have a group who they can go with. So trying to create opportunities, maybe it's that you're gonna view a documentary that's talking about whatever interesting concepts that are related to something that you all are working on in your classes, or just things that can bring people together where they don't necessarily have to be the ones to initiate conversation, but that it can then initiate conversation and further connection. Those were the things that were way easier to become a part of and like actually connect with other classmates.
Yeah, a little structure.
Yeah.
Yeah, a little structure.
I'll share one thing as well, is when I was in my grad program, we used to eat dinner together because our classes were at night, but not all of us could afford to eat out. So we'd all bring our dinner from home and sit together at one long table and eat. you can find where people are at, go to where the people already are, instead of necessarily always trying to pull them into new spaces, which can be good too. But, yeah, thank you all so much for joining us, and thank you all as well for being here. We really appreciate all your wisdom and all your thoughts, and thank you for